Caspian Reed jolted upright in bed, heart hammering, as a woman's voice cut through the silence of his hotel room. "Sir, you really have to wake up. Your car's been waiting for over 20 minutes. Blinking against the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan hotel suite. He stared up at the woman hovering beside his bed. She wasn't in a hotel uniform. No clipboard. No headset. Just jeans, a white tee, and a very annoyed expression. Who the hell are you?" he croaked, voice rough from sleep. She crossed her arms. "The housekeeper quit this morning. I'm her emergency replacement, and you're about to miss your meeting at the Midtown Conference Center." Caspian cursed, grabbing his phone off the nightstand. 1 missed call. 2. Then 5 more. He was supposed to be at the biggest investor pitch of the quarter, his own company's pitch 20 minutes ago. "I don't oversleep," he muttered, dragging a hand through his hair and springing out of bed, already pulling off the rumpled white t-shirt he'd passed out in. "You did today," the woman replied, unbothered, turning toward the door. "Elevator's still broken, by the way." "Good luck." "Wait," he called after her, halfway into his slacks. "What's your name?" She paused, looked over her shoulder. "Waverly." And then she disappeared, the door clicking shut behind her. He made it to the meeting barely, sweaty, breathless, and with his tie on backward. But the pitch went well. The investors didn't seem to care that he looked like he'd just run a marathon. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Waverly. No last name. No number. No nothing. She was just gone. Except she wasn't. 2 days later, he saw her again. Same hotel. This time in the hallway, pushing a cart stacked with towels. "You," he said, stopping dead in his tracks. She looked up, frowned. "You again." Caspian stepped in front of her cart. "Waverly, right?" She sighed. "Look, I'm not getting fired for talking to guests, so if you need something, I need to take you to dinner," he said bluntly. Her eyebrows shot up. "You don't even know me. You woke me up and saved my entire company." "That's a start." Waverly looked genuinely amused. "That's a little dramatic." "I'm a dramatic guy," he said. "And I don't usually miss meetings. I also don't usually chase women down hotel hallways. So give me a break here." She hesitated, then gave him a shrug. "Fine. 1 dinner. But if you turn out to be a creep, I'm walking out." Caspian grinned. "Deal." Dinner was the rooftop terrace of La Belle Noire, the kind of place with candlelit tables, a live string quartet, and a menu without prices. Waverly showed up in a black dress and worn-out sneakers. "You're really committing to the I'm not impressed vibe," he said as he pulled out her chair. She tilted her head. "Are you trying to impress me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Yeah, I am." Waverly didn't try to hide her smirk this time. "Then you're off to a decent start." They ordered, talked, laughed. She told him about growing up in Jersey, how she was working 3 jobs to pay off debt from a degree she never finished. He told her about building Reed Tech from a single prototype in his garage to a multi-million-dollar company no one thought would survive its first year. "I shouldn't even be here," she said after dessert, eyeing the skyline. "I've got laundry to do and rent to stress about." "You should always be here," he said, his voice low. "You belong in places like this." She gave him a look. "You don't even know me." "I'm getting there." They didn't kiss that night. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But she just said, "Thanks for dinner," and disappeared into a cab before he could say anything else. Still, she texted him 3 days later. Said she was free for coffee, if he wasn't too busy being a millionaire in a suit. He showed up 5 minutes early. And then it became a thing. Rooftop dinners. Late-night walks. Her sneaking into his hotel suite with takeout when he worked too late. Him showing up at her tiny apartment in Queens with bags of groceries and a new espresso machine. "You're not subtle," she told him the night he brought her a designer coat because he noticed she didn't have one. "I'm not trying to be," he said. "I like you. A lot." Waverly looked up at him, her voice soft. "You know this can't be real, right?" I'm not someone who fits in your world." Caspian stepped closer. Then I'll build a new one. She stared at him like she didn't quite believe it. Like no one had ever said that to her before. Waverly, he said, brushing her hair behind her ear, I don't care where you come from. I just care that you're standing here. With me. She didn't answer. But that night she kissed him for the first time. And it changed everything. They were fire and lightning after that. Fast. Intense. Real. But not easy. Because nothing ever is. Waverly didn't come from silence, and she didn't trust it either, not the kind that settled in the pit of the stomach and bloomed into doubt. So when Caspian didn't call for 5 days, she told herself she wasn't waiting. Not for him. Not for anyone. She worked a double shift downtown and caught the last train back to Queens, her shoes soaked from a burst pipe in the hotel's laundry room. She didn't check her phone. Didn't need to. If he wanted to talk, he would have found a way. But on the 6th day, he was standing outside her building. Dark wool coat, collar turned up, one hand stuffed in his pocket, the other holding a small white paper bag. You forgot your charger, he said when she stared at him. I didn't leave it anywhere, she replied flatly. I know, he said. I just needed an excuse. She didn't move. The wind whipped a strand of hair across her cheek. I messed up, he said. That night you kissed me, I thought I had everything under control. I didn't. You disappeared. I had to fly to Chicago. Emergency board meeting. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding like a coward. Were you? His jaw tightened. Yeah, I was. She stepped past him, unlocking the front door. You coming up, or are you just going to stand out here pretending that bag's not getting soggy? He followed her up 3 flights. No elevator. No complaints. Inside, she dropped her keys and hung her damp coat on the back of a chair. He set the bag on her kitchen counter. What is that? Your favorite, he said. Fig tarts. The ones you picked over dessert that night. You remembered. I remember everything you say. Especially when you think I'm not listening. She opened the bag. The scent of warm pastry filled the room. She took one and bit into it, watching him. I don't need saving, she said. I know. And I don't want to be a project. You're not, he said. You're the only real thing I've had in months. She finished the tart and leaned against the counter. Why are you really here? Because I can't stop thinking about you, he said. I've been trying to focus, trying to stay in my world, but every time I walk into a meeting or pick up my phone, all I want is to know where you are. She crossed her arms. That's not enough. It's not all, he said quietly. I want to see where this goes. I want to give it a chance. And I'm willing to wait if you need time. He didn't touch her. Didn't move closer. Just stood there and let the silence happen. She nodded once. Okay. He blinked. Okay. You can take me to dinner tomorrow, she said. But no rooftops. No candlelight. I want ramen. And I want to pick the place. His eyes lit up. You got it. And you're paying. You'll never have to ask twice. The following evening, she met him outside a hole-in-the-wall noodle shop in the East Village. The kind of place with peeling menus taped to the windows and a line that wrapped around the corner. You waited? She asked, glancing at the crowd. They don't take reservations, he said. I got here an hour ago. The hostess waved him in. He held the door. Inside, it smelled like garlic and sesame. They sat at the bar, elbow to elbow, steam rising from deep bowls of broth. You're overdressed, she said, eyeing his tailored coat. You said no candlelight. You didn't say no cashmere. She snorted. Next time, wear flannel. Or don't come at all. Noted. They ate in silence for a while. Then she put her chopsticks down. I don't know where this is going, she said. But I'm not going to pretend it doesn't scare me. He looked at her, spoon paused midair. I don't want to be someone you experiment on, she continued. I've got enough baggage without being your what-if scenario. You're not a maybe, he said. You're the first thing I've been sure of in a long time. She didn't answer. But this time, she didn't stop him when he laced their fingers together beneath the counter. On the walk back, it started to drizzle. He offered her his coat. I'm not cold, she said. I didn't ask. She didn't argue. Just slid her arms into it, the fabric swallowing her whole. He didn't say anything else until they reached her building. I'll see you tomorrow, he asked. I don't do daily updates. Fair. But can I still text you? You can try. He leaned in. Not a kiss. Just his forehead pressed to hers. Good night, Waverly. Good night, Caspian. She watched him leave, the rain blurring him into shadow. She didn't sleep that night, and neither did he, because something had shifted, and neither of them could pretend it hadn't. Caspian didn't take her to another restaurant after that. Instead, he invited her to a private gallery opening in Soho 1. His company had invested in through a new philanthropic initiative. The gallery specialized in showcasing underrepresented artists, a small but personal passion project he'd started after a long-ago conversation with his late sister, who'd once wanted to be a painter. Waverly hesitated when he asked, "I don't do art scenes." "You don't have to. It's not about the scene. It's about the work," he said. "And I want you to see something." The gallery was tucked between two old brick buildings, with iron sconces lighting the entrance in warm gold. Inside, the space was minimalist white walls, bare floors, and soft instrumental music that pulsed from hidden speakers. Waiters passed around champagne in crystal flutes, and everyone seemed to be wearing some variation of black silk or tailored wool. Waverly tugged at the sleeve of her dark denim jacket. "I don't belong here. You belong anywhere you decide to walk into," Caspian said, offering his arm. "Come on. I want to show you room 3. They moved through the space, past bold abstracts and haunting portraits. When they reached the small corner room, she paused at the doorway. Inside hung a single painting in enormous oil canvas, mostly blue and gray, with a single streak of crimson cutting through the center like a wound. She stepped closer, her voice lower now. "What am I looking at?" "It's called Fault Line," Caspian said behind her. "The artist painted it after her brother died." She said it was the first thing she'd touched in 2 years that didn't feel like a betrayal. Waverly stared at the canvas. "It looks like something breaking apart from the inside." "Exactly." She turned to him. "Why this one?" "Because I thought maybe you'd understand it more than anyone else here." Her eyes didn't leave the painting. "You think I'm broken?" "No. I think you've survived things that would have crushed most people." She didn't speak again until they left the gallery. Outside, the air had turned cold and the streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. "My father used to paint," she said, her voice even, "before he lost his job. After that, he just stopped. Said the last thing he needed was another thing he couldn't afford to finish." Caspian watched her, quiet. "I used to sit beside him while he worked," she continued. "He'd hum sometimes. Never the same tune twice." "I didn't know," he said. "You don't know a lot yet." "I want to." She looked at him then. "Why?" "Because every time I learn something new about you, I don't want to stop." The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was full of something unsaid, stretching and pulling at the edges of what they were becoming. "I should get home," she said finally. "I'll walk you." "No need. I'm used to walking alone." He didn't argue, just held her gaze for a beat longer than necessary. "Text me when you get in." "I won't. I'll still wait for it." She turned, walking down the sidewalk, the distance between them lengthening with each step. Caspian didn't move until she disappeared around the corner. The next morning, she found a small brown envelope slid under her apartment door. No note. Just a printed ticket to an independent film screening at a theater she'd once mentioned in passing. When she opened the door to look down the hallway, it was empty. That night, she sat 2 rows from the back, arms crossed, watching the story unfold. It was a quiet film. No resolution. Just 2 people trying to unlearn the damage they hadn't asked for. When the credits rolled, she turned and found Caspian waiting outside the exit doors, hands in his coat pockets. "You didn't come inside," she said. "I didn't want to ruin it." "You think you could've?" "I think when you're used to being alone, sometimes company feels like interruption." She studied him. "You're not what I expected. Am I better?" "Depends on the day." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I got some news this morning. The board wants to expand the Singapore deal. It would mean relocating for at least a year." Her stomach sank before she could stop it. "When?" 3 weeks. She looked away. "I don't want to go," he said. Then don't. It's not that simple. Nothing ever is, Caspian. He stepped closer, voice lower. I'm not asking you to wait for me. I'm asking if you'd think about coming with me. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. You're serious? I've been serious since the moment you kicked me out of bed and told me to get my life together. She shook her head, stunned. I have a life here. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I can't just drop it and follow you halfway around the world. I'm not asking you to follow me, he said. I'm asking you to believe this could be more than a few good nights and a handful of memories. She stared at him. I need time. Take it. I'm not leaving tomorrow. They stood there, the city pressing in around them, horns, lights, voices, all of it fading into something quiet. She finally said, if I say yes, it won't be because you made it easy. It'll be because you made it worth it. Caspian nodded once. Then I'll earn it. And for the first time, she didn't walk away. Waverly stepped out of the arrivals terminal at Changi Airport into a wall of heat and unfamiliar noise. Her hair was pulled into a braid that had started to fray somewhere over the Pacific, and her canvas duffel bag hung heavy on her shoulder. She scanned the crowd until she saw him. Caspian stood by a sleek black car, his jacket slung over one arm, collar open, sunglasses tucked into his shirt pocket. His expression didn't change when he saw her. He just walked forward, took her bag without a word, and kissed her like the wait had been a century long. She let the kiss happen. Let the weight of it press into her chest. And when it ended, she didn't ask what came next. I booked a place outside the city, he said as they slid into the back seat. It's quiet, has a view, and less glass than my usual. Less glass. No floor-to-ceiling windows. I figured you wouldn't want to feel like you were living inside a snow globe. She gave him a look. You remembered that? I remember everything you say. Even the throwaway stuff. The car pulled away, merging into the blur of palm-lined roads and towering buildings. She watched the city pass, the skyline different but the people the same, rushed, distracted, alive. I haven't told anyone I left, she said finally. You don't have to. Not until you're ready. I'm not sure I ever will be. Then don't. No one gets to dictate your timeline. At the house, if it could be called that, it was more like a modern villa carved into a hillside. They stepped into cool air and polished wood. There were no chandeliers, no marble, just clean lines, open space, and bookshelves that lined an entire wall. She touched the spine of a worn hardback. Whose idea was this? I asked someone to find out what your favorite authors were, he said. That one's been out of print for 20 years. She turned the book over in her hand. You went through that much trouble? I didn't want this to feel like a cage with a view. She looked at him then, really looked. His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. And the shadows under his eyes were darker than she remembered. You okay? She asked. I haven't slept much. Why not? Because I didn't know if you'd actually come. She set the book down. Well, I'm here. That night, they sat on the small stone terrace, a bottle of cold white wine between them and the city lights flickering below. The air smelled like salt and something green. Do you miss it? She asked. New York. The noise. The pace. He shook his head. I miss the certainty. The illusion that if I just moved fast enough, I could outrun whatever was wrong. And now I'm tired of running. She leaned back in her chair. I thought I'd feel different when I got off the plane, like I'd made some wild leap. You did, but it didn't feel like falling. It felt like stepping into something I already knew. He poured another glass. You scared. Only when I let myself think too far ahead. Then don't. Just be here. She didn't answer, but her hand found his under the table, fingers threading through his. He didn't move. The next morning, he wasn't in bed. She found him in the kitchen, barefoot, bent over a pan. You cook? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I own a company, not a spaceship. I can handle eggs. She took a bite of toast from the counter. They better not be dry. They're not. She watched him move around the kitchen, sleeves rolled, hair a mess, humming under his breath. You're different here, she said. He glanced over. Good different or concerningly different? Less polished? He shrugged. I didn't bring any suits. You're not trying to impress me anymore? He looked at her, steady. I'm trying to keep you. Later that day, they walked through a local market. Not the tourist kind, but the real kind, crowded stalls, shouting vendors, the scent of curry and fried tofu thick in the air. He bought her a bracelet carved from rosewood and didn't ask if she wanted it. Just slipped it onto her wrist like it had always been there. As they wandered deeper into the maze, she pulled him to a stop in front of a small vendor selling hand-stitched fabric. She picked up a square of cloth threaded with gold. This was my mother's favorite color, she said. He didn't ask what happened to her. He didn't have to. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and paid for the cloth without a word. Back at the house, she spread it across the kitchen table. I'm going to sew something out of it. Like what? Don't know yet. You've done that before? My grandmother taught me. I haven't touched a needle in years. He reached for her hand. Then start now. That night, she pulled a chair into the living room, her knees tucked under her, the fabric across her lap. Caspian sat on the floor beside her, reading, one hand resting lightly against her ankle. When the power flickered brief, just a heartbeat, neither of them moved. I used to be scared of losing everything, he said. And now I'm scared of losing one thing. She set the needle down. You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that. I can promise I'm not planning on going anywhere. Days passed like that. Quiet. Real. They laughed. Argued once over whether they should order groceries or go out. She won, and they ended up in a night market, eating noodles off paper plates while sitting on overturned crates. One afternoon, she found him in the study, staring out the window. What's wrong? I got an offer, he said. To sell part of the company. Majority stake. She didn't answer. It would mean less control, less pressure, but also less of what I built. She leaned against the doorframe. What do you want? I want mornings like this. You. A life that doesn't feel like it's always waiting to collapse. Then maybe it's time to build something new. He looked at her, something shifting in his eyes. The next day, he didn't go into the city. He canceled meetings. They spent the morning planting herbs in pots on the terrace, her hands covered in damp soil, his voice low as he told her about the first investor who ever believed in him. And that night, he knelt in the middle of the living room, a velvet box in his hand. No speech, no audience, just her, barefoot and sun-warmed, stitching a seam she hadn't finished. Her breath caught. I don't want a perfect life, he said. I want a real one. With you. All in. No backup plan. She stared down at him, the ring catching the light from the floor lamp. Then she set her sewing aside, crossed the space between them, and dropped to her knees too. Yes, she said. But only if it's messy. Only if we get to keep being human. His hand shook when he slid the ring on her finger. They didn't kiss right away. They just held each other, forehead to forehead, the world narrowing to one point. And in that room, surrounded by half-read books, a crooked pot of basil, and a stray thread trailing from her knee, they stopped being two people who had collided by accident. They became home. 3 months passed with the steady rhythm of a new life, one made of early mornings filled with quiet coffee, evenings spent building routines from scratch, and days that didn't need to be loud to feel full. Caspian no longer kept a countdown in his head for meetings or flights. His calendar was lighter now, intentional. Reed Tech had finalized the partial acquisition. He'd retained enough to stay involved without drowning in it. Waverly had started sewing again. Not just little projects, real ones. She'd turned the guest room into a studio space with a second-hand mannequin and bolts of fabric she picked up from local markets. She didn't call it a business yet, but she had already taken on 2 commissions from expats who'd seen her stitching while they passed the open windows. Word had started to spread. Caspian walked in one afternoon to find her standing barefoot on a sheet of muslin, pins stuck between her lips, adjusting the hem of a silk gown draped over the mannequin. You look like you're about to conquer a kingdom, he said, setting down a bag of oranges on the counter. She pulled the pins free and pointed one at him. If you distract me and I mess this hem up, I'm blaming you. He held up both hands. Just feeding the queen. She arched an eyebrow. You're getting better at not hovering. I've been trained by the best. He crossed the room and kissed her temple before stepping back. She didn't flinch or shy away like she had in the early days. Her edges had softened in his presence, but the steel in her hadn't dulled. It had just found peace. A week later, a letter arrived from a gallery in Los Angeles. The artist who had painted Fault Line was curating a show of emerging textile designers, and someone had submitted Waverly's work. They wanted to feature her. She held the letter in her hand for a long time, silent. "You gonna say something?" Caspian asked, watching her from across the room. Her fingers trembled slightly as she handed it to him. "I didn't send anything in. I don't know who did." He read it once, then again. "Whoever it was has good taste. I'm not ready for this." "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing." She looked up, her voice low. "Would you come with me?" He didn't blink. "Of course I would." They flew out a month later. The dress she showcased was a reinterpretation of the cloth she'd bought that first week in Singapore, stitched with gold thread, structured with raw edges that defied couture rules. It hung in the gallery, surrounded by white space and hushed admiration. A woman in a tailored jumpsuit approached Waverly near the end of the night. "Your work has a kind of defiance to it, like it doesn't care if it wins your approval." Waverly didn't hesitate. "It doesn't." Caspian watched her from across the room, wine glass untouched, pride written across every inch of his face. She didn't need his protection here. She was fully herself. Later that night, as the city hummed around them, she turned to him in their hotel suite, her bare feet curled beneath her as she stared out at the skyline. "I used to think I only had one story," she said. "One version of my life that I had to survive." He brushed her hair behind her shoulder. "And now I think, maybe I get to write a new one." "You already are." She turned to him. "Would you hate me if I said I want to stay in LA for a while? Just a few months." "They offered me a short-term residency." He leaned back, considering it. "You'd still want me there?" "I don't want to do any of it without you." He smiled, a slow, quiet thing. "Then we'll find a place. Maybe something with less glass." They moved into a sun-drenched bungalow near Echo Park. The front yard was a mess, but Waverly planted herbs anyway. Caspian worked out of a shared workspace downtown, advising startups and mentoring founders who reminded him of who he once was. They didn't plan a wedding. Not at first. But one morning, as Waverly was sketching designs in the backyard, Caspian set a cup of tea beside her and said, "I don't want to wait anymore." She blinked up at him. "For what?" "To call you my wife." They married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony with hand-sewn linen napkins, wildflowers picked from a neighbor's garden, and a cake made by a friend of a friend. He wore a dark blue suit. She wore a simple white dress she'd made herself, no zippers, no corsets, just silk and honesty. They exchanged vows barefoot in the grass, their hands linked, the breeze catching her veil. "I promise," she said, "to never let you forget what it means to be real." "I promise," he replied, "that no matter where we go, you'll never have to face anything alone." They kissed, and the world didn't change, but it felt like it had. Years later, their home was filled with things that mattered. A mug with a chipped handle that Caspian refused to throw away. A wall covered in Waverly's early sketches. A closet that held both his sharpest suits and her thread-covered aprons. She opened a boutique, a small space with exposed brick and a sign that simply read Waverly. People came for the clothes, but they stayed for the story stitched in every seam. Caspian split his time between consulting and writing. His first book wasn't about money or success. It was about failure, about starting over, about love. They still argued sometimes, about laundry, about whose turn it was to make dinner. But the fights never lasted long, and the making up always reminded them why they'd chosen this life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Waverly stood on the back porch, holding a tiny pair of shoes in her hand. Caspian stepped outside, took one look, and froze. She didn't need to say anything. He crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her, and whispered, "We're going to do this, aren't we?" She nodded against his chest. All in. And they were. Through every season, through every unexpected turn, they stayed what they had promised to be real, imperfect, and completely, irrevocably in love.